Section 10 of the Golden Porch. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Du Bois, Orlando, October 2023. The Golden Porch by W.M.L. Hutchinson, Peleus and the Sea King's Daughter. Chapter 2. In the dim, green depths of the sea where all is calm and silent, while winds are howling and white waves tossing far above, where winter never comes, and strange pale flowers bloom all the year round in forests of rainbow-colored seaweeds, there are as many kingdoms and countries as are found upon dry land. One of the largest of these countries was ruled by the old sea king Nereus, and it lay near the shores of Greece. Fathoms down below the blue southland waters stood the sea king's palace, built of coral and amber and roofed with mother of pearl, and there he dwelt in peace with the 50 princesses, his daughters. These maidens were more than earthly beauty, but the youngest, whose name was Thetis, was the loveliest of them all. And in her childhood she was the darling of the rest, who called her their little queen. Now Nereus, like all the sea people, was not only immortal, but had the power of foreseeing the future. And so, having already lived hundreds of years and possessing this gift of prophecy, he had grown exceedingly wise, and the gods themselves often sought counsel of him. For he knew all that had happened in the past and all that was to come. It befell about the time that Peleus went to dwell with Chiron, that the god Poseidon came from his own sea palace to the halls of Nereus, desiring some advice, and found him feasting in royal state, sitting on a crystal throne and waited on by the 50 princesses. The ancient king rose up to greet Poseidon and placed him in the seat of honor at his right hand, and the beautiful Thetis hastened to serve him as cupbearer. When they had feasted enough, the other sisters began a wonderful dance, and as they danced, they sang. Their dance looked like the twisting and untwisting of a rainbow, for they moved in 7 bands of 7, and the robes of the first 7 were violet, of the next rose-colored, and so on. But Thetis, who was robed in white, sat meanwhile on a silver footstool at her father's feet. This was her birthday, and the dancers sang their love for her and wished her perpetual joy. Poseidon could not take his eyes from the lovely sea princess, and he thought, "There is none like her, even among the goddesses." The dance ended, and Nereus placed a chaplet of 50 pearls on the head of Thetis, saying, "Each of my daughters, O Poseidon, receives such a coronal as this when she grows up to womanhood, and today I crown my youngest and fairest child. No mortal princess had ever so rich a dower, for every pearl is worth a king's ransom." "Most wise Nereus," answered Poseidon, "you and I know well that all the riches on earth are poor compared to the hidden treasures of the sea. We know, too, how men will toil and suffer and deal wickedly to gain the gold and gems which we immortals deem but toys and trinkets. Yet I will make bold to say that even the most covetous of men, if he might choose, would rather wed this maiden than possess her crown of pearls." "Boldly spoken indeed," said the Sea King with a smile. "But enough of this. Be pleased to tell me now what you desire of me, if, as I think, you came seeking counsel." "To tell you what I desire," said Poseidon, "I must speak more boldly still." "Do so, my guest," answered Nereus. "Plain speech and noble thoughts are what all look for from Poseidon." "I would wed Thetis," said the god, looking upon her with his grave blue eyes. "I came hither, dear Nereus, to ask help of your wisdom, as I have often come before, but I have seen a sight that makes me forget all else. Now, therefore, I ask for this your daughter to be my queen. And will you not first ask, said the ancient king, what my counsel is upon this marriage? How if it be destined to work you evil? But Poseidon tossed his dark head and answered, Nay, I will hear no prophecy. Give me my desire, and let come what may. Shall I give my child, then, said Nereus, to one so headstrong, who will no more heed a warning than the waves whose lord he is? At these words, Poseidon's eyes sparkled with anger, and he rose up, drawing his great stature to its full height. Beware how you refuse me, he cried, or you shall learn that I am Lord not only of the waves, but of all that lies below them. Yes, for when Zeus, my brother, took the throne of heaven from our father Cronus, he kept for himself the realms of sky and earth, but to me, his chief helper, he gave dominion over the world of waters. Mine are the seas and rivers and all that is therein. It is even as you say, answered Nereus calmly, and we, the ancient people of the sea, must own you for overlord, who are of the younger and stronger race of the sky children. Yet think not, Poseidon, that you can make us afraid. You and your brethren, mighty though you are not the first world rulers we have seen, nor the last we shall see. Trust me, the day will come when your power too shall be broken, when you shall plunge into these twilight deeps to rise no more and find your last refuge in this house of your friends. Grieve not the love we bear you, high-hearted son of Cronus, by violent words, but let us part in peace. If in a year and a day your heart is still set on wedlock with my child, then come hither, and you shall have her. The proud Poseidon's heart was touched by this gentle answer, and his angry mood passed away as suddenly as it came. Farewell, then, O king, he said, and farewell, maidens all, until I come again. Sweetly have you sung in praise of Thetis, but sweeter yet will you sound your voices in the joyous bridal song. So saying, he went his way to his own palace under the waves. Now, because, as Nereus said, Poseidon was one of the sky children, he came often to the councils and the feasts that Zeus held with the other immortals in the heavenly halls. Not long after this, it chanced that while the gods were gathered at their banquet, they began to debate who was the fairest among the goddesses. Some said Hera, and some Athena, and some Aphrodite, but Poseidon kept silence. Then said Zeus, Brother, you alone have not spoken. For whom will you give your voice? For none here, answered Poseidon, and therefore have I held my peace. But if Thetis, daughter of Nereus, were to rise from the sea and come among you, your debate were quickly ended. Neither in earth nor heaven is there beauty like hers. The goddesses heard these words with great disdain, and the gods smiled to hear the unknown sea maiden preferred to the queen of heaven and the queen of love. But Zeus was more ready to believe his brother, and he asked where this wonder might be seen. Poseidon told him that the sea king's daughter came upon moonlight nights to play and dance upon the shore. If you would see them, he said, take the form of some bird or one of the seals that sleep among the rocks, for if they catch sight of man or gods watching them, they dive at once beneath the waves. Poseidon said nothing of his love for Thetis, and in his eagerness for Zeus to see her loveliness, he forgot that it might win the heart of his mighty brother. But the very next moonlight night, Zeus took the form of a sea eagle and perched upon a rock as though asleep. And while he watched Thetis dancing with her sisters, her beauty cast a spell upon him, even as it had done upon Poseidon. He, the king of gods and men, sat musing and silent when the immortals were gathered again around his table, until the haughty, jealous Hera began to taunt him with scornful words, asking him if he had also seen the sea witch, for so she called Thetis, and been made dumb by her enchantments. I have seen the daughter of Nereus, he answered, and little need, proud queen, has she of witchcraft, for she is yet fairer than Poseidon told us. Neither the evening nor the morning star is so beautiful. Make her your queen then, cried the angry goddess. No longer will I be called the wife of Zeus, who affronts me to my face. No, I will go down to earth. I will journey to the land beyond the sunset and dwell with old Cronus, our banished father. And you, usurper as you are, may share the throne of heaven with what upstart you please. Oh, a glorious bride truly will you sit in Hera's royal chair. Green eyes has she not, and a fish tail? Hera knew quite well that the sea princesses had no tail, except the mermaids in the north, who belonged to a different family, but she wished to say as many unpleasant things as she could. Now what was the grief and anger of Poseidon when Zeus, instead of soothing Hera as he often did, answered sternly, Your will shall be done, wayward goddess. Bear witness, all who hear me, that Hera is my wife no more. Tomorrow shall see another queen in heaven, fair. I am more gentle than this troubler of our peace. Nay, O king, cried Poseidon, this must not be. The daughter of Nereus is my promised bride. But when he told how Nereus had promised to give him Thetis, if he asked for her in a year and a day, Zeus smiled and said, My simple brother, the ancient of the sea, who knows the future, knew that you would not come back in a year and a day, because ere then Thetis will wed another. Do you not see how easily he beguiled you? Bitterly shall he rue it then, said Poseidon, yet why should he deceive me? Besides, he said something of evil threatening from the marriage, and it comes into my mind that he would have given me his daughter with good will, but for that very reason. What evil might that be? Asked Zeus. I cared not to learn it, answered Poseidon recklessly, for be it what it may, it shall not turn me from my purpose. Thetis is mine, I say, by her father's promise, and not even you, king of us all, shall take her from me. Zeus made no answer, but his brow grew black as the storm cloud, and the glance he darted upon his brother was more dreadful to behold than the red lightning. Poseidon, who flinched not under that awful gaze, which no one else ever dared to meet, flashed back a look of deadly rage, while even Hera sat overawed, and the rest watched affrightedly the faces of those two great brethren in silence deep as the hush before it thunders. All at once in the tense stillness the sound of trailing garments was heard without, and there glided into the hall a veiled figure clad in white. Slowly she moved towards the throne of Zeus and stood between the angry gods and stretched out a hand to each. Then with one mind all the mortals rose up in reverence. Zeus himself took the newcomer by the hand and seated her beside him on the throne. Too seldom, holy goddess, do you visit us, he said, and welcome now and always, whatever be your errand. Have you seen some law broken or some injustice done in the cities of men that you come veiled among us as if in sorrow? This he said because the goddess, whose name was Themis, was the guardian of justice and of upright dealing, and was honored in every city, but her pure eyes could not behold iniquity, and she veiled her face from the sight of wrongdoing. She was, moreover, a very ancient goddess, and had received from Earth, her mother, the gift of prophecy and the knowledge of hidden things. She now threw back her veil and turned her calm, sad gaze from one to other of the still frowning brother gods. It is not by men, she said, that the invisible altar of justice has been spurred this very hour. The sky, O Zeus, has darkened at your frown. The sea, O Poseidon, has risen in tempest at your furious voice. And trembling mortals have wondered for what impiety the gods are wroth. But it is you, their judges and avengers, who are now transgressing the sacred laws of righteousness. Shall it be told among the kings of earth that the king of the gods put away his wife for a passionate word and used his power to take the bride promised to his brother? Or shall it be sung among the noble deeds of Poseidon that he defied his king and brother, whom he had sworn to obey as supreme? Cease this unhallowed strife, O sons of Cronos, and turn away your minds from the daughter of Nereus. For were she 10 times fairer than she is, you would not wed her if you could read her fate. With downcast eyes, those high gods listened to the rebuke of Themis, and they answered her never a word. Then she rose up to depart, but they both prayed her to tell them first what that fate was of which she spoke, promising that they would strive no more, but would draw lots who should wed the sea maiden, if they still desired her when they knew all. It is ordained, said the wise goddess, that the son of Thetis shall be mightier than his father. This is the peril of which Nereus would fain have warned Poseidon. For if one of the greater gods marry her, the son born to them must be so powerful that may make himself lord of heaven and earth. His strength will be irresistible, and he will wield some weapon more terrible than Poseidon's earth-splitting trident or the thunderbolts of Zeus. Easily would that new god overthrow you all. When the 2 gods heard this, they took an oath not to marry Thetis, although Poseidon declared at first that he would not give her up, come what might. But Themis bade him remember that the son born to him would be a danger not to himself alone, but to all the sky children, his kindred. So for their sakes he yielded. Then said Zeus, what if some other immortal, perchance one of the earth-born giants, our ancient foes, should wed the sea maiden and rear a son to overthrow us? Lest that should come to pass, said Themis, let her be given in marriage to a mortal. Then will her child be mortal also. Let the sea king's daughter endure the lot of a woman, mingled of joy and sorrow, and look at last on a son fallen in battle. Lady of good counsel, said Zeus, say further, on whom shall we bestow such a bride? There is a king's son called Peleus, answered the wise goddess, who dwelt of late in Locus and won the praise of all for his upright life. You, O Zeus, know well that the praise was just, and already you have been his protector in peril. Now, if it seems good to you, you may reward him as he deserves. It pleases me well, said Zeus. I have not forgotten that brave youth, nor how Acastus would have destroyed him by treachery. My purpose was to give him a sure refuge with Chiron until the time came for him to avenge the evil deed of the godless king, who dared to break the law of host and guest. Even now he would slay Peleus if he could find him, so bitter is the grudge he bears him. But for this, while we will let him alone, soon enough will he pay one price for all. So let it be, said Themis, and now, king of gods, send Hermes with all speed to Chiron's cave. The wise centaur, when he hears the tidings, will teach Peleus how to win the sea maiden and make all things ready for her marriage feast. Straightway Hermes put on his shining sandals, which bear him dry-shod over the sea and land, and departed with his message. The song of birds was loud in the woods of Pelion as the god drew near to the centaur's cave, and the ground he trod was carpeted with crocus and violets and the scarlet windflower, for it was now the springtide. Peleus sat with Chiron in the cavern doorway and saw one coming towards them through a sunny glade. He thought it was some shepherd lad of the hills, for his eyes were holden that he might not know the god. But the centaur knew him and said, Hail, friend, what may be your errand here? It is for your ear only, said Hermes. Then Peleus said, It is full time, O Chiron, that I went hunting again. I will go in chase of roebuck or wild kid to feast your guests withal. And so he took his weapons and hastened forth. At evening he returned, bringing venison, but the stranger was gone, nor did Chiron speak of him. Wherefore Peleus asked no questions, having learned the best of manners from the good centaur. Next morning Chiron said to him, I bethink me, Peleus, that I need the juice of a certain flower for a salve that I'm making. Do me the favor to bring me some of it. Willingly, said Peleus, only tell me what is the flower and where it grows. It is the yellow sea poppy, Chiron answered, and you will find it blowing on the seashore not many leagues from here. But to be of any virtue, it must be gathered by moonlight. Well, that is easily done, said Peleus. The moon tonight will be almost full. At sunset I will go down to the sea and gather your poppies while she shines upon them. So Peleus went down the mountain slopes at evening time and came upon the cliffs above the sea and saw the waves break glimmering in the dust below. Then he sat down and waited till the moon should give him light to find a path down to the beach. And being wearied, he fell asleep. When he awoke, the world was flooded with silver radiance, and through the warm, still air of the May night, a sound of clear voices singing came mingled with the murmur of the sea. He sprang to his feet and leapt down the rocks from ledge to ledge, drawn by the magic of that entrancing song. And then, as he reached the shore, he saw the singers and stood spellbound with wonder and delight. The daughters of Nereus were dancing in maiden mirth on the level sands, not clad now in rainbow-colored robes, but covered only by their floating hair. Faster and faster flew their little feet, twinkling in the moonlight as if slippered with tinsel, and all the while their shrill, sweet song rose up like the singing of 1,000 larks. Peleus could have looked and listened forever, but all too soon one of the sea maidens, who seemed to lead the dance, passing close beside him, turned her head and looked him in the face. Only for an instant he looked into her deep eyes, in color like the violet shadows on a sunny sea. Then, with a startled cry, she turned and fled into the waves. Away, away, cried all the sisters, and like a flock of white seabirds, the whole company scurried into the moonlit waters and dived out of sight. Peleus forgot all about the yellow poppies. Slowly and sadly he went back up the mountainside and came to his cavern home in the gray dawn and told the good centaur what he had seen. O Chiron, he said, unless your wisdom can help me, I am a lost man from this hour. That song I heard is yet ringing in my ears, and the eyes of that sea maiden who looked me in the face will give me no rest until I see them again. Tell me how I may approach her and not be seen, for the longing I have to behold her is like a sword in my heart. Such pain, said Chiron gently, must all endure who, being mortal, look on immortal beauty face to face. Know, Peleus, that she of whom you speak is the youngest and fairest of the daughters of Nereus, the aged sea king. Her father named her Thetis, which means spell maiden, because he knew she would cast a spell of longing upon gods and men. Now, unless you break that spell, you will pine away and die, like the luckless sailors who come to the Isle of the Sirens and listen to their singing. But I will tell you what you must do. Before moonrise tonight, hide yourself behind some rock upon the shore, and when the sea maidens come, watch until Thetis is so near you that you can seize her in your arms. Then hold her fast until she speaks to you, for when she speaks, the spell will break. Remember that the sea people have many strange powers, but beware, whatever happens, that you do not let her go. Peleus did as Chiron bade him, and as Thetis went dancing by, he sprang out from his rock and threw his arms about her. Again, at her sudden cry, did all the other sisters flounce into the waves, never pausing in their flight till they reached their father's hall. But this time the youngest sister came not home with the rest. Peleus felt the sea maiden tremble for a moment in his strong arms, and then she began to struggle with such violence that he marveled at the force of her slender body. "Speak to me, Thetis," he cried. "Speak but one word, and I will let you go." But Thetis only struggled the more wildly. Silently then they wrestled together in the moonlight until Peleus began to feel his strength go from him, and his breath came thick and fast. The white limbs of the sea maiden seemed to grow colder and colder to his touch, so that a shiver ran through him, and he closed his eyes, still clinging desperately to her writhing form. And then with horror he felt that form as if it were melting in his grasp. He looked again at what he held, and it was no maiden, but a great sea snake, ringed with green and purple, coiling this way and that to twist itself free. Only its eyes were the eyes of Thetis, and seeing them, he gripped the creature still closer, though his heart stood still with terror. There came a cloud across the face of the moon, and in the dark those eyes seemed turning into balls of pale green fire. His hands no longer clutched the slippery coils of a serpent, but something furry and sleek. The moon breaking from the crowd showed him the form of a black panther. Yet his heart did not wholly fail him, though the panther snarled fearsomely and drove its sharp claws into his side. As blood drops from the wound fell on the panther's glossy fur, Peleus could feel it tremble. For one instant it lay still in his arms, and in that instant he cried once more, "Speak to me, Thetis." But now it gave a spring that well nigh made him lose his hold, and he tripped over a stone and fell headlong. Furiously struggled the panting beast as they rolled upon the sand. Hither and thither it dragged him, while still he held on grimly, setting his teeth and straining every muscle in a last despairing effort. Its form seemed to swell and change color before his failing eyes. Surely now it was a huge, tawny thing he fought with, and his fingers were locked in a shaggy mane. All at once the hollow roar of a lion rent the silence. He saw its gleaming fangs and felt them fasten on his arm. "There is the end of me," he thought, but he would not let go. Gathering all his strength, he seized it by the throat with his other hand, to strangle it if he could. The lion, half throttled, shook its mighty head and bounded madly towards the water's edge, carrying Peleus along with it. He lost his footing again on a seaweed-covered rock, and falling heavily, lay there stunned. When he came to himself, his face was wet with seawater. The moon was down, and at first he could only see that a shadowy form crouched near. Still dazed, he sat up and lifted his arm to look at something long and brown and lustrous in his clenched hand. Was it a lock of the lion's mane or a ribbon of seaweed? "You are pulling my hair," said a soft voice close by, and at that sound Peleus burst into tears of joy. The sun had risen out of the eastern sea, but the dew lay yet in myriads of diamond drops upon the upland lawn when Peleus and Thetis, hand in hand, began to climb the mountain path that led across them into the green forest. They had sat till daybreak by the gray lapping waves, for when the spell was broken, it seemed that the Sea King's daughter had many things to say to the mortal who had conquered her. She told him how her people have the power, if any take them captive, of changing their shape 3 times. But if they fail to break free in the 3rd shape, they must return to their own. And how, when she quitted the form of a lion, she had thought to plunge into the sea, but could not, because in his swoon his hand still clenched upon her hair. And how, even as she wounded him in her struggle, a strange new anguish came upon her at the sight of his blood, so that she longed to speak, but the wild sea nature in her locked her lips. "Then, Peleus," she said, "as I watched you lying there so pale with shut eyes, I thought, this is death, of which I have heard tell, but never saw till now. And it seemed to me so cruel a thing to die, and look no more upon the sunlight, that I, who had never wept, shed bitter tears upon your face. Was it your tears I felt? said Peleus, and not the salt sea spray? O Thetis, may they be the last, as they were the first, to fall from your eyes. But alas, they were not the last, nor the most bitter. Now as they talked together, it was as if they had known each other always, and now were met again after long absence. Such joy they had in the sight and speech of one another. And when Peleus said, I can never leave you again, Thetis, she answered, there is no need, for I am happier with you than I have ever been before. Come then, said he, I will bring you to the cave of the good Centaur, who is to me as a father. And he told how Chiron had saved his life from the men of King Acastus and all else that he had done for him. But now, he said, I owe Chiron my life twice over, for had he not sent me to gather sea poppies, I might never have seen you. And had he not counseled me to hold you fast, whatever befell, surely I must have let you go, and then my heart would have gone with you under the sea, and I have perished in my despair. Thetis smiled, and as they left the beach, she stooped and gathered a handful of the yellow poppies, saying, let me bring these flowers to Chiron, since it was through me that you went back to him empty-handed. So they went on together into the heart of the forest, and ever as they went, the sea maiden looked about her and cried out for pleasure like a child at the wonderful new things she saw and the new music that she heard among the boughs. She thought indeed that it was the trees she heard singing, for though she could see the birds flit through the branches, she did not know they were not dumb like the flocks of painted fishes that hovered among the coral groves of her own garden. She wondered, too, that the wild flowers would not uncurl their petals when she stroked them like the sea anemones, and because nothing has any scent under the sea, the wood violets and little wild hyacinths puzzled her very much. I think these flowers at least can sing, she said to Peleus, although you say the trees cannot, for something comes from them like strange, soft music, only instead of hearing it, I seem to breathe it. The only thing that did not surprise her filled Peleus in his turn with great wonder. Every bird and beast would come to her when she called it. Ringdoves and woodpeckers came fluttering around her, the baby rabbits scuttled to her feet, and even the busy squirrels hurried down from the treetops to look at her with wise, bright eyes. Little brother or little sister, she called them all, for she knew none of their names, till Peleus told her. At noon they rested and drank of a spring that flowed from under a mossy rock, and in an oak hard by, where bees were coming and going, Peleus found a great store of honey. And Thetis thought the honeycomb more delicious fare than the food of the gods. Towards evening they came to the cave, and the centaur met them upon the threshold. This is the Sea King's daughter, O Chiron, said Peleus, and she has brought you the yellow poppies. That is well, my son, said the centaur with his grave, kind smile, for I see that you have need of the salve which I was preparing for you. And at these words the sea maiden looked at the wounded arm of Peleus and hid her face in her hands. But Chiron laid his hand on her bent head and asked, Are you content, daughter of Nereus, to abide with this mortal whom you have followed hither? Then she looked up and said, I am content. Where he dwells, I will dwell, and where he goes, I will go. Though he is a mortal man and must bear the lot of men, will not the high gods be gracious to one who is fair and noble as themselves? The gods, answered Chiron, are well pleased, O Thetis, that you should wed this youth, for they desire to honor him to the utmost, because he has been found faithful and true of heart. Nay, more, it is their pleasure to come as guests to your marriage feast, and ere long they will be here. It is the night of the full moon, and happiest are the bridals on which she looks down in all her splendor. Come within, my children, the sun sinks apace, and Philia and Triclo wait to array the bride. Then they went in and saw that Chiron had made ready a great feast, and they marveled at his foreseeing of what had befallen. As the sun set behind the hills, dim shapes began to move rustling through the silent woods, and the lights of pine torches twinkled in the gloom of leaf-canopied aisles. Peleus, whose tired limbs Chiron had bathed and anointed with the healing balm, came to the doorway and looked forth into the gathering dusk. He saw the lights, which drew slowly nearer, and heard a noise as of a herd of deer pattering over the fallen leaves, and above it the sound of wild, sweet music. Soon he was aware of a strange company coming towards him with torches and with garlands, playing on pipes of reed and dancing as they came. It was a troop of fawns, he knew, for he had once or twice caught sight in the forest of one of those shy creatures, like a beautiful sunburnt boy, but goat-footed and with curved horns peeping out from the curls on his brow. And now from the gray stems of the great trees around came gliding the tree fairies, the lovely dryads, one of whom dwelt in every tree and had her life bound up with its life, so that when it fell she was no more. There came also, following the piping of the fawns, whatever beast or bird is awake by night, owls with solemn eyes and prowling foxes, and a wolf with her cubs, and a lion that rolled at Peleus' feet like a great dog. When all were gathered about the cavern door, the first beams of the May moon lit up the open space before it as she rose above the treetops. Then suddenly the air was filled with melody so divine that the fawns played no more, but threw down their pipes and listened with awe-struck faces. Louder grew the strain as of harps and voices mingled, and now through the clear heaven above rolled a peal of thunder, and a trembling shook the ground, while a great voice cried out loud, "We are come, O Chiron, to the marriage of the Sea King's daughter." At that voice the fawns and dryads bowed themselves to the ground, and Peleus also. He heard the centaur answer from the threshold, "Hail, lords of heaven and sea, enter this my dwelling, for all things are ready." And lifting up his eyes, he saw before him a throng of bright-robed forms, and in the midst of them 2 kings, glorious to look upon. These cast gracious glances on him as they passed into the cave, while the celestial chant rang out again from the lips of their followers, mingled with the clear harmonies of the golden lyre that one among them played upon. Last of that company came that same shepherd lad whom Peleus had seen 3 days ago, but now transfigured by the bloom and radiance of a god, so that he knew him to be Hermes. The messenger of the immortals now took him by the hand, bidding him hail, and they went in together after the rest. The great and lofty cavern chamber was ablaze with torchlights, and the heavenly guests were seated in a half circle on the rock-hewn bench that ran round its upper end, tables covered with all manner of woodland fare being set before them. In the highest place between Zeus and Poseidon sat the Sea King's daughter, veiled with a veil of silvery sheen. It was woven out of gossamer and moonbeams by the forest spiders, who weave all the robes for the dryads. Hermes led Peleus through the hall and placed him beside her, while all the immortals gave him greeting in joyous tones. And now the feast went forward with mirth and laughter and rejoicing, and the gods praised Chiron's good cheer, the venison and oaten cakes and mountain honey, and drank the wine he poured for them into the carved beechwood bowls. Peleus was glad to see that the good centaur had made the forest guests welcome also. The fawns were feasting merrily, couched on deer skins at the lower end of the cavern, and all the beasts and birds had their share of such food as they liked best. As for the dryads, they ate only honey and drank a wine that the centaur had brewed from elder blossom. When all had their fill of banqueting, Apollo took up his lyre and played, while the violet-crowned Muses rose up and sang together. First they sang the praise of Zeus, their father, lord of all. and next to the lovely bride, the pearl of the sea, whom the gods had bestowed on Peleus for his exceeding great reward. The youth blushed deeply as he listened, for now they told of his coming to the house of Acastus, the false queen's love for him, and how he was faithful to the king, his host. Then, as Apollo struck a deeper chord from the pealing lyre, his own voice began to lead the choral song, chanting words of prophecy. For he, the minstrel of the gods, is also their seer, having received from Themis herself that gift of divining which Earth, her mother, gave her. So now, with wide eyes gazing before him as though he saw a vision, the god sang thus of the days to come. A wondrous child, the son of Peleus and Thetis, shall be reared in this cave by Chiron's fostering care. That child, even from 6 summers old, shall hurl his small javelin with true aim and godlike strength at bear and lion that prowl near the cavern's mouth, and drag their still panting carcasses to the centaur's feet. And Artemis, goddess of the chase, and valiant Athena will come many a time to watch unseen those feats of the little hunter. But when the boy, trained and taught by the wise centaur in all noble ways, comes to the prime of his glorious youth, then in the company of princely warriors he shall cross the seas and do battle with mailed hosts beneath the walls of a far city, and win himself an everlasting name. For ages after that city has fallen amid flames and slaughter, the lips of a mortal minstrel, poor and blind, will sing the deeds of the son of Thetis in such a deathless lay that his memory shall endure till the end of time. The song ceased, and all who heard it sat a while in silence, musing on that prophecy. Then Zeus arose and said, "The song of Apollo is his marriage gift to Peleus and to Thetis. Now will I declare what is mine. Peleus, and the strength I will give him, shall overthrow with his single spear Acastus and all his soldiery, and reign as king in his stead. Moreover, to him and his children's children I will give wide kingdoms in other lands of Greece." Then said Poseidon, "And I will make Thetis queen of the coasts and headlands, and all the bays around them, where this land borders on the seas of her ancient home. So shall she return as a great princess when she visits her father Nereus." The rest of the gods also made promise of gifts, and each of the goddesses decked the sea king's daughter with a golden necklace or girdle or bracelet of her own, wrought by the cunning hand of Hephaestus, the divine craftsman. It was now midnight, and the torches began to burn low in the vaulted chamber. Once more Apollo's lyre was heard, but now he played a stately marching measure, and all the guests passed singing together out of the cavern. Peleus and Thetis rose up and followed them into the moonlight. For Chiron said, "Go now, my children, with those who will lead you to the home prepared for you." Now when they came forth upon the lawn, the heaven-dwelling gods were gone. Only the fauns, with relighted torches, and the dryads, with hands full of flowers, thronged about them with laughter and with greetings. And so, led by the forest people to the sound of their sweet wild pipings, they went together into the great heart of the woods. The owls hooted softly overhead as they went along, and the wolf cubs trotted beside them, till they came to the hunting lodge which Peleus had built for himself of unbarked fir logs and thatched with reeds and moss. The door stood open, and they saw a wood fire burning on the hearth within. Then, because he knew that a bride must not set foot upon the door sill when she is brought home, Peleus lifted the sea king's daughter across the threshold in his arms, and they too were left alone. This is the end of section 10.